So, the first season of the Wheel of Time show has ended, and now I gotta figure out how to survive the wait until season 2. Luckily, my hyper focus on, exclusively Wheel of Time related stuff seems to have spontaneously ended. I just suddenly, the other morning, found myself able to contemplate reading a non-Wheel of Time book, which was shocking, but also a massive relief. I was worried that my brain wouldn't be able to switch. I do think, though, that my brain is still 50% Wheel of Time and then 50% everything else, like life, work, other entertainment, whatever. It's all crowding that second half of my mental space. A lot of my thoughts are still just focused on this world, this show, these characters, these books. And so with that in mind, I thought I'd share with you some of my early nascent theories about season 2. Now, because I'm going to be talking about a future season, obviously this video is going to contain spoilers for the entire first season of The Wheel of Time, but I also will be discussing book spoilers through to, I think, Lord of Chaos, which is book 6 of the series. So if you haven't finished the first season and haven't read up to book 6, this video, not for you. For the rest of you, though, let's go.
Let's be nerdy, babe. Let's be nerdy, let's be nerdy. Let's be nerdy, babe. Let's be nerdy, babe. Let's be nerdy, let's be nerdy, babe.
Now, before I get into season 2, I thought I'd start with some theories I have about season 1. Now, these are all theories that will likely never be proven true or false, but I'm going to tell you anyway. We all, or most of us anyway, we know about Barney Harris leaving the cast after episode 6. For those of you who don't know, the pandemic hit after the filming of episode 6, and then a lockdown was put in place and filming stopped for a while, I think several months. And Barney Harris, who's the actor who was playing Matt Cawthon, he just never returned to filming after the lockdown was lifted. He's been recast for season 2, so don't worry, but that meant that any plans that they had for Matt in the final 2 episodes had to be rewritten or written around. Things he was supposed to do had to be reallocated to different characters. I think the general consensus is that the awkwardness that a lot of us felt about the way episode 6 ended, for me, it's the weirdness of the ending of episode 6, which is why it's just slightly lower than episode 4 in my personal ranking of the episodes. That weirdness was almost certainly a result of having to retroactively cut things to exclude Matt from the next episode. So here's my theory. If you watch episode 6, there's a moment where right after she opens the Waygate and Moiraine says,
"The wheel weaves as the wheel wills."
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills. I'm 99% sure that was supposed to be the end of the episode. Everything builds to that moment. It's an awesome crescendo. And imagining a smash to black, Dusty Wheel shout out, but imagining a smash to black right after that to me would be a perfect end to that episode. But they couldn't do that. They had to add on this tag to the episode that needed to explain why Matt wasn't going to be there for the next step. Now that leads me to my theories about this with regards to episode 7. Obviously, I think Matt was supposed to be a part of that conflict between our 2 Rivers crew that we saw in episode 7, but I think it was changed. Instead of being a conflict between possibly Egwene and Matt, it was between Egwene and Rand about Matt. Part of me wants to think that they added the bit about Perrin's feelings for Egwene to fill in some of the empty space left by Matt's departure, but okay. I watch a lot of other content creators, and one of them is Recapacidai, or actually Brian. Brian has been doing reviews of the episodes and recaps with his husband after each episode, and his husband brought up something really, really convincing. In the first episode, when Perrin goes back to the forge with Layla, with his wife, he says, "You didn't even go to her ceremony." He says her. The fact that he didn't have to say her name, that makes it sound like they'd already been arguing about Egwene. Otherwise, he would have said her name. So yeah, they absolutely were building this up from the episode 1, from the beginning. I still hate it. I know that this is a thing that happened. I know that married people have crushes. I never actually thought that he was in love with her. I'm pretty sure in a video I said the word crush. But I hate it. It's tainted those moments, those scenes in earlier episodes that I loved between them, where I thought I was seeing pure friendship, pure platonic friendship. I know that this is a thing that happens in real life, but this show isn't real life, and I think it was completely 100% unnecessary drama added for no reason. It doesn't have a payoff, and it just makes things awkward. Okay, that's a side rant. Back to theories. Episode 8, moving on. I think it's incredibly obvious that interaction between Perrin and Fane was meant to be Matt and Fane. I think they set that up from episode 1. Matt is the only one we actually see interact with Fane, and only one of the Two Rivers crew, anyway. So it would have been a perfect bookend to see him interact in the first episode and then in the final episode. Fane could have even called out the thievery that he saw Matt do in the first episode as a symptom of his darkness, instead of picking up an axe when faced with a fade. 2 fades. Like, in my mind, it's a much stronger argument to say, no, you were a thief, instead of you are defending yourself against Shadow Spawn. Like, it's a stronger argument. It's a stronger scene with Matt, but obviously they were working with what they had. They had no Matt, so they wrote it. And it's not a bad scene. It's actually a very good scene. It's just, I feel the loss of what that could have been. But what that leads to, though, of course, is what was Perrin supposed to be doing in the last episode? And this is where my bigger theory comes in. I think Perrin was supposed to go with Lan. Perrin was supposed to be using his mysterious, nebulous, wolfy abilities that, we've only kind of gotten an explanation of, but I think he was supposed to use those to help track Moiraine. It makes so much more sense than Moiraine has a tell that you, Lan, you're a super warder who's been traveling with her for 20 years, you don't know this tell. That doesn't make sense. I kind of wish that they had just left it and not brought up that, because it's focusing a light on something that they shouldn't be focusing a light on, because there's no answer to it. But Perrin having like a mysterious magical ability in a mysterious magical way, that they go into the mysterious magical blight and they are able to follow her, that makes more sense to me. And I think that was what was supposed to happen. But okay, those are my theories stemming from Matt's absence. I'm sure I will have more theories about season 1 later, but for right now, let's jump ahead to season 2. My biggest theory about season 2 is, okay, we actually have to step back. Moiraine can't channel at the end of season 1. She can't touch the source of the one power. There's some debate about whether she's been shielded or stilled, but I think, I'm 100% convinced that it's a shield. I should have it up on screen right now, but what the Dark One did to her looks virtually identical to what, they were doing to Logain in episode 4. The Dark One is just so much faster at it. And then we see this thing that he does with his hand, and look at that. That's a knot. All right, even though I give spoiler warnings, I have been informed, I see it in the comments all the time, that people who haven't finished the series, they ignore my warnings and keep watching. Anyway, so I'm going to try and be not too specific here, but when one does something with the power, it's called a weave, we do know this, and if one wants to maintain the effects of a weave without having to be actively there and maintaining the weave, you do something called tie it off. You can just basically tie a knot in the weave and leave it, and then the weave will stay in place. And tell me that what this Dark One dude does here doesn't look like that. Like, that's a knot in his hand. Now, let's go back to episode 6 and begin the episode with little baby Swan. What's the very first thing we see her do with the one power? She unravels a knot in a net. And then what does her father tell her to do when he sends her off to Tar Valon?
Practice your lures and your knots every day.
And then, when we see her in the magical love shack, what is she doing? It's super quick, but she's practicing her lures and knots. Swan knows knots. I think Swan is going to unravel or untie the shield on Moiraine in season 2. I know somebody's about there, right now about to type, but women can't see men's weaves. But they can feel men's power. We know that they can feel the absence, the empty space. We see that in episode 4, in fact, actually. And I think that that's what happened in that moment with Karene when she, looks and defends her sisters. I think what she did was she felt Logain's power pressing against specific points in the shield and knew where it was going to burst through. And that's how she was able to put up whatever she did to protect the others. We know, again, us book readers know, that certain sisters actually train to defend themselves against weaves that they cannot see. They have to. And in the books, we see instances of people who untie or break weaves put in place by the opposite gender. So we know, at least using book canon, that this is possible. And setting Swan and Moiraine up as a romantic pairing and having Swan be an expert in knots, that's show canon, it's a good through line, and it would be so satisfying. Now, obviously this isn't something that happens in the books, but I think this is absolutely necessary for the show because, like, we're going to have to do stuff like this several times throughout the series. Give characters that disappear for entire books something to do during certain plot lines. And anyone who's upset about this, particular edition better not get upset when Rand has something to do besides nightmares and kill dogs while everybody's running towards the stone. Or, Perrin has anything whatsoever to do during the events of Book 5. Like, you're not gonna sideline Rosamund Pike and Daniel Henney for an entire season. That would be insane. Okay, anyway, more theories. The finale ended with Agomar speared through the chest and Uno and Loyal stabbed. Pretty sure they're all alive. I thought so even before, A, Rafe Judkins confirmed that Loyal was alive, and B, we've seen photos of the actors who play Uno and Agomar having like a coffee or something together during the filming of season 2. This makes me happy and mad kind of at the same time. Happy because, yay, specifically Loyal and Uno are beloved by me and pretty much the entire fandom, so they better not be dead. But annoyed because, seriously? 4 fake-out deaths in one episode? We got Nynaeve, Agomar, Loyal, and Uno, like, all apparently dead, and then none of them are actually dead. Like, it's weak. I don't like that. Another random season 2 theory. Elsie Grinwell gonna show up at the tower. Now, this theory is entirely based upon, like, outside information. In episode 3, we get this adorable little girl giving Matt her Brigitte doll. She's precious, she's an amazing, cute little actress, she does a really good job, and the subtitles tell us that her name is Elsie Grinwell, who is a character from the books. As multiple people told me in the comments on that video, on Discord, on Twitter, on anywhere else that they could find me, that character's name was changed, but they just hadn't updated the subtitles. She is apparently credited on, like, IMDb and on, like, Amazon as not Elsie Grinwell, as Helga Grinwell. Now, her name is never said in the show, so there's no reason to make a point of not having her name be Elsie, or to change her name, unless Elsie is going to show up, which is super interesting to me, because Elsie is, like, she's a specific type of person, but she is Elsie Grinwell in the show, like, a member of this family that got slaughtered in episode 3. That's gonna be super interesting to see how, like, the personality of Elsie Grinwell deals with that trauma. I'm very, very curious. Now this is a time when people are still communicating through, Pigeon, so it's entirely possible that, she could still be a member of this family and then just not know that her entire family was skewered by a fade, but I don't know, it's just weird to see her being her saucy self while knowing that this has happened. I was very curious to see what, if anything, happens there. Speaking of the tower, I think we'll finally get an explanation about Nynaeve's block. We heard in episode 8 that she's not able to listen to the wind anymore, but she was still able to open up to Amelisa, so that was odd. I have so many thoughts about how that went down. But okay, the way channeling works in the show doesn't have to be exactly the same as it is in the books. We already know that it isn't. So maybe that could be something different, or maybe Nynaeve was just pissed off enough to be able to channel. I mean, that would not be an unusual state of affairs. But yeah, I think that's finally going to come into play. We'll finally also get some details about the specifics of channeling, like the 5 powers, how weaving works, etc. I'm not upset that we don't know this now, to be honest, because thinking back to Eye of the World, we really don't know much about how the magic system worked in that book at all. Like, we barely know anything. Egwene keeps asking, like, Moiraine about her, your staff is very powerful, and, like, nobody really knows. And this season basically stuck with Eye of the World, so not knowing that much about how it works makes sense. More tower-related theories. I think Megan is gonna end up getting captured by the Seanchan. She's the Aes Sedai, like, outside of our core group that we know already, so it's gonna hit harder if it's her. If they can get that actor back. And of course, we'll get Egwene. Oh man, I can't. I can't even think about it too much. It's gonna be so brutal. So much of what happens to Egwene with the Seanchan happens off screen in the books. Like, to the point that I know I've personally pointed out to multiple people, that Egwene's time with the Seanchan was longer than Rand's time in the box. It seems a lot of people don't realize that she was a captive for like 2 months or so. I think in the show, it's not going to be off screen. I think we're going to see it. And I know that's good TV. I know it will be captivating and engaging and people will be talking about it, but oh my God, it's going to be hard. Okay, moving away from the tower, I think Perrin is going to get a lot more to do in season 2. We might even get an Elias to explain things to him. I read Rafe's explanation of why, Perrin had such a slow burn in season 1. He said if they had made it clear what his deal was with the wolves, it would have been obvious that he wasn't the dragon, and that makes sense. The dragon mystery definitely seemed to engage non-book readers in speculation. Like, based on the reaction videos that I've watched, they all really were into guessing and making bets with each other and sort of stuff. So I get that. It just meant that Perrin spent this first season being traumatized and then paralyzed by his trauma. So yeah, my theory is that he'll get his wolfiness explained to him in season 2, and then he will use his wolfiness somehow in pursuit of the horn, much like what happens in book 2. Speaking of the horn, I think that this is how Matt is going to get involved too. I think Matt is going to be useful because he was tied to the dagger, and we saw that Fane has the dagger now, my theory being that he got it from our favorite dark friend, Aes Sedai. And I think Matt is going to be able to track Fane because of the dagger, which will lead them to the horn. And then we'll get the amazing battle sequence in Falma and the horn being blown, and yeah, that's going to be awesome. I also think that somehow in all of that, Matt will actually touch the dagger again because he's a stupid boy. And then he's going to need the full healing. Like, okay, first of all, I do think that it's likely that he wasn't fully healed. Moiraine just thinks he was, because I wonder if non-readers are picking up on the whole characters just don't know stuff. Like, I wonder if they're picking up on people say things like they're certain and then they're just not. They're wrong. Because that is such a big thing in the books. But okay, anyway, I think Moiraine thinks that he's completely healed, but he isn't, which is why he still has a connection to the dagger. But I do think he's going to touch it again, and things are going to get much, much worse, and then he's going to need that full healing by a full team of Aes Sedai, much like we see happen in Book 3. The thing I don't know is how Matt will end up getting reunited with the group in the first place. I guess they will have to be heading to Tar Valon, and then they'll meet him there. Okay, well, this reuniting actually leads me to my final prediction, and it's the one that I'm the least sure about, I have the least specific theories on. I feel like we're supposed to think that Rand is heading to the Waste at the end of episode 8, which would make sense. He's been giving these hints about his heritage, so it makes sense that he would go looking for answers there. But it feels way too soon to go to the Waste. We already know that they're introducing the Seanchan in season 2. I don't think that they can also then have this big Aiel culture info dump at the same time. It's too much, especially if season 2 is also only 8 episodes. It's too much information. People are going to get lost. Plus, they've introduced the Horn of Valir, and of course the Seanchan. If he's going to the Waste, he's not going to be there for the events he needs to be there for, which, okay, I know they can change things, it's fine, but I, right now, cannot think of a way for the story to work with Rand in the Waste, and the Horn of Valir, and Matt, and Egwene, and the girls, and Falma. The pieces, they don't fit. So, my prediction is that somehow Rand will end up back with everyone else. How's that for vague? But this actually would follow the books too. He begins the Great Hunt, like book 2, with that whole, I'm gonna go off on my own, I'll make my friends hate me, and then I'll run off. But then he ends up with them. So it's a parallel to what happens. I just don't know how in the show it's gonna work. I could make it work, I think, if Matt was with them, but he isn't. He's in Tar Valon, so I think everyone else has to head back to Tar Valon, and Rand somehow has to circle end up back with him? I don't know. I don't know how to make it work. And that actually leads to another question, because Moiraine, like, physically can't go back to Tarvalon. I suppose she can go near Tarvalon, but so many interesting questions, and how do we wait for season 2? I don't know. Oh my god. Anyway, these are my less than a week after season 1 predictions for season 2. I had a year to think about this. I'm sure I will come up with other things. But what predictions do you have? Let me know in the comments, or come join my Discord. I will link to that in the description below. And if you like my content and you want to support me, please check out my Patreon. My patrons are all geniuses and they all smell fantastic, or so I've heard. I don't know. I just love them dearly. I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. And with that, I will end this here. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.